morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Welcome to our expert panel, Beyond Sight, Exploring the Frontier of Computer Vision with Gen AI, brought to you by our friends at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. I'm Brian Mink, co-founder and president of Data Science Connect, the world's largest data and AI community. Today, we're excited to welcome hundreds of attendees from all over the world to discuss the latest developments and innovation in computer vision and generative AI. In this webinar, we'll dive into emerging developments in computer vision technology, including the trends and applications that are shifting the landscape of data science and visual data interpretation. Gen AI has the potential to be a game changer for computer vision, helping augment existing data sets and enhance degraded images. It's also democratizing access to insights across organizations and enhancing customer experiences through mass personalization. We're excited to explore these topics and more with our distinguished panel of experts today. Lacey, AI Solutions Business Manager at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, Ming, Director of Business Intelligence at the University of Texas Medical Branch, and Morgan Cundiff, Data Science and Machine Learning Manager at LTK. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. To make this feel a little more in person, we suggest you add a photo to your profile and include your bio, LinkedIn profile, and other information you'd like your fellow attendees to see. Next, please take advantage of the Q&A and chat features throughout the webinar. We'll be dedicating a portion at the end to Q&A, so be sure to upvote the questions you'd like the panel to address. And finally, to learn more about how you can accelerate your computer vision and AI journey, check out the poll question in the right sidebar and call to action at the bottom of this page from our sponsor, HPE. Now, without further ado, let's kick off our panel. I'm going to welcome our panelists onto the stage here. There we go. And we are all here. So welcome to all of you. We'll start with just some quick intros. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do in your current role in your current organization. Why don't we start with you, Morgan?
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Brian, and welcome, everyone. I'm Morgan Cundiff, as Brian already said. I run the data science and machine learning team at LTK, doing a bunch of work across the board. I've been through a lot of e-commerce and fashion companies in the past after studying bioinformatics in undergrad. So been kind of across the board, across the field of data science and machine learning, and done a bunch of different pieces of the data landscape. Now I really love building out novel use cases for machine learning and AI to kind of ease the manual burden and unlock that creativity and magical experience for our users.
Awesome. Welcome, Morgan. Kurt?
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Kurt Lacey with HPE. I'm an AI solution business manager, been with the company for over 32 years, worked extensively in AI and always been on the technical side of helping clients adopt AI technology to drive better operational efficiency for their organization. So I work directly with many of you and many large corporations to help you be successful in adopting all the components you need to deliver AI to your business.
Thanks, Kurt. Welcome. And Ming?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Ming from the University of Texas Medical Branch in the Greater Houston area. I currently lead a team of developers that develop data analytics pipelines from ETL to advanced analytics. And more recently, I'm part of a team that's working on incorporating our enterprise data into the OpenAI model using Azure AI Service. My background is in biomedical informatics from Stanford, and I built my career mostly in the healthcare industry. I'm really excited to join the discussion today.
Thanks, Ming. Welcome. So why don't we kick things off with just kind of an introduction to what computer vision is and what some common use cases are. So Kurt, why don't you start with that one?
Well, pretty straightforward. It's really the ability of AI to interpret and make sense of visual information. So that could be images or it could be videos. More recently, it could be multimodal models that incorporate both visual and text together. But there's a lot of, at the very early stages of AI, there was a big adoption of virtual type AI models. And I think a lot of the early successes of AI came from image processing. And so obviously, I'll point you to a few resources that probably all of you know about, but on huggingface.com, there is a wide range of use cases for object detection and recognition, facial recognition. There's models for autonomous vehicles, medical imaging, as Ming mentioned, image classification, augmented reality, The other kind of cool place to go if you don't know about it is Kaggle.com. So they have competitions that they publish on different AI model competitions for people to develop. And if you look through that website, you'll see some of the virtual competitions out there that are kind of exciting to see kind of what people are trying to build models to address. So hopefully some of those resources will help you.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt. Morgan or Ming, you want to weigh in on kind of where you see computer vision applications?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in a little bit on that one as well. I think there are so many applications of computer vision out there, especially with all the advancements that have been happening recently. I think the classic use case you see for computer vision is a lot of image classification and being able to make sense of that previous image data that wasn't organized. You have so many different kinds of images. It can take so much manual input. But with computer vision, it really is helping to build out a lot of the understanding of that kind of unstructured data that we have at companies. So I feel like that has been another really exciting advancement there, just in the general computer vision field as a whole.
Yeah, great point. Ming, where are you using computer vision?
I would add also in the synthetic imaging field, because especially in healthcare for clinical trial, when it's hard to recruit some of the patients when it's a rare disease or hard to find disease. With generative AI, they are able to now generate synthetic image or synthetic patient data, making a digital twin of a patient, so that they can have a broader testing training data and make the clinical trial more efficient and cost effective.
Yeah, great use cases there. Digital twins, structuring unstructured data. So already touching on some great themes that we're going to dive into further. So getting to our next question, we've seen obviously some dramatic advancements in Gen AI over the last couple of years. How do you guys see Gen AI really transforming existing computer vision capabilities? Why don't we start with you, Morgan, on that one?
Yeah, I think this is such a great question, and there's also so many different answers. I think there's so many great use cases for the generative part of generative AI itself, where we see people making novel images or editing existing images, turning images into video, and I think that opens up so much opportunity for creativity and artistry. There's so many use cases for things like that in virtual reality or avatar generation. But I also kind of want to touch on, just kind of as you implied in the question, how much the Gen AI is revolutionizing even other parts of computer vision. I think there's so much potential for its use in validating data sets, cleaning up data sets, even augmenting data sets that we would use in other use cases, both computer vision and all types of machine learning, where we can take a data set, send it into something like an LLM or some other type of generative AI and say, hey, which of these might be mislabeled? What areas might we need to increase our data set in? What might not be present in this data set that needs to be to have a well-rounded model? And really seeing the ability of Gen AI to help us build more well-rounded models in other cases as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Ming, where are you seeing these developments go with Gen AI?
I think multimodal is definitely an interesting field, because image processing is much faster than, say, linear words or language processing. By incorporating image and time dimension, even future sounds, that will make it information processing much more fast and efficient, and on that level.
Yeah, absolutely. Kurt, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's super exciting. I think Morgan and Ming have brought up a lot of great examples. I think going from 2D to 3D spatial recognition will be really cool to see. I'm hoping VR really takes off personally. So that's really neat. There's a lot of technology advancements that are happening. People like generative, adversarial networks, or GANs, are coming online to be able to kind of validate image generation, image sets. VITs are coming online with the ability to do image classification without using, CNN. So there's a lot of technology advancements. Such a rapidly growing field. It's like super cool to be part of, because you're really seeing a lot of really impactful benefits. I think on the medical side for drug discovery, we work a lot with NVIDIA around some of their virtual capabilities of doing drug discovery with, like, say, AlphaFold or BioNemo. And I think some of those medical advancements of being able to accelerate, like, molecular identification and structural analysis, and we're going to see a huge society impact on just the rapid adoption of advances in medical capabilities. So it's super exciting to see. So really neat stuff. I couldn't agree more with Ming about multimodal. I love, like, I go to Google a lot, and I love Gemini in terms of all its multimodal support, like taking videos of your house and then it writes a textual description of it. I mean, it's just really fun stuff to use day to day at home or at work.
Yeah, let's double click on that point for a second, the idea of multimodal. So for those in our audience who aren't as familiar with that concept, Kurt or Ming, do you guys want to give a brief synopsis of what it is you're referring to?
Yeah, I'll be happy to jump in there. So it's really extending the virtual aspects of interpreting not only image data classification or text classification, but marrying what we view as computer vision with natural language processing in a very multimodal based architecture. So now you don't have to make that choice of saying, I have text or I have images. You can go from text to images. Obviously, we do a lot of image generation with a lot of the standard tools and offerings out there today. And you can go from images back into text. So we're seeing a lot of companies adopt, RAG type implementations. And when you think about RAG, it involves a lot of textual documents that your company has, but it also could have tables and graphics inside those documents. So you need to be able to take images and interpret the images alongside your textual information and embed it into a RAG type of implementation that we heavily involved with clients.
Yeah, great points there. Go ahead, Ming.
Yeah, I totally agree. So integration of visual data with other types of data such as text, audio will drive the development of multimodal models that can analyze and synthesize information across multiple domains. This will enable richer insights and more comprehensive data analysis.
Yeah, great points. And just to touch on one more thing that you mentioned, Kurt, with respect to RAG, so retrieval augmented generation, obviously lots of different use cases around that. With essentially pointing the large language models at your data, leveraging your own data for Gen AI, and training the model on your own data, and combats things like hallucinations, some of the other challenges that are associated with Gen AI. What are you guys seeing specific to the computer vision space with respect to RAG? Any cool applications there, or things that people should be cognizant of when implementing RAG on the computer vision side of things? Anybody want to take that one?
I'll be happy to jump in. I mean, I think I already mentioned the fact that, you have to really look at the sort of data that you're interpreting in a RAG implementation and understanding how to properly interpret it and apply it to your environment. But I think, overall, there's been a real trend on image processing classification around open source models. So what you're seeing is kind of an industry adoption of very large scale LLMs that many of the large model providers provide, but then you're seeing this really big onslaught of open source image classification and capable models that are coming online from Hugging Face and others. And you're seeing the quality of some of these open source models really approaching what I call closed source models in terms of accuracy and capabilities. And so a lot of customers are really looking at how they can take a common model and then feed it images to do various tasks for them and applying it to their data. And a lot of them are doing it with open source models more and more so than ever before. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. That's a great point because open models allow company to customize the model into their own data so that the result of that model is their own property. So makes the model more accurate towards their own purpose.
Yeah, great points. Getting to our next question, one of the most exciting applications of generative AI and the way it's transforming data science is the democratization of data across an organization. So particularly in the computer vision space, it's very interesting that, the power that we're putting at anybody's fingertips. You don't have to be a technical user to do a lot of things that you used to have to be a highly technical user to do. So that's very powerful capabilities. How do you see that unfolding in kind of an enterprise context? How are organizations going to leverage Gen AI to contribute to data democratization? And what are some potential pitfalls to look out for as you do that, or some potential opportunities? Morgan, why don't you kick us off with that one?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is such a great question because I think it actually ties back a little bit into the both RAG and open source conversation we were just having. But I think one of the huge callouts here is just data understanding and data explanation, which can be a great use for RAGs of, hey, I have this image that that is demonstrating some data that I maybe don't fully understand. Can we caption it? Can we explain it? I think that's a huge use for Gen AI in general too, is that you can have kind of these back and forth chat experiences where, maybe whoever created that dashboard or that data image, they did put some brief description, but I really need to do a little more of a deep dive, or I just don't fully understand it, not having that super, high technical background, and I need a little bit more of an explanation. And so I can kind of use different Gen AI techniques to kind of get more of a curated description for the background I have, for the understanding I need, and kind of have that back and forth where maybe I'm asking some additional questions there of, hey, am I understanding this correctly? Is this a, good thing to be taking from this image? Can you explain this part of it more? Can you explain this part of the data more? And really have that kind of catered experience where I'm really getting the background I need, but also the specific questions I need when maybe there isn't always someone who can, step in and have that conversation with me every single time I need details on a particular piece of data. You talked about challenges as well. Obviously, I think with most, if not all, Gen AI, I think a big one is these kind of hallucinations or issues that we can run into. Where, if we're trusting this data as a source of truth and asking those back and forths, we need to really make sure that the information we're getting is correct and valid. So I think that's something we need to be very careful of as we're developing Gen AI, with the impression that it will be viewed as a source of truth for people who are interacting with it. I think we've seen that as a big pain point for companies out chatbots, where someone comes in and asks a detailed question about their policy and gets told, yes, that is our policy. You can get a refund in this case. And maybe that's not necessarily true. It's just giving you the answer that it's been trained to give based on all of the examples it's seen before. And so, another interesting, I think, direction for RAGs is that, you can give it a lot of that context, and we can, try and make sure that we're getting the correct information. And I think, I'm sure we'll talk about trends for Gen AI and computer vision, but I think that will be a big one of making sure that we have these models taking in the appropriate context and appropriate information, not giving what it thinks should be the answer, but using the appropriate context to give, the correct answer if it can find one.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points about the practical implications of democratizing across the organization. Ming or Kurt, you want to weigh in on that one?
Yeah, I think it's definitely showing its power in the administrative side of the house. So like marketing and HR can generate image now with a word and a phrase, a prompt that's not possible before, and that greatly increased the work efficiency for that administrative sessions.
Yeah, I want to make a few comments here, and I agree with Morgan and Ming in terms of its capabilities. We work a lot in computer vision with a lot of independent software vendors as well. So I'll give you some examples. For a use case for manufacturing and quality control, if you look at the manufacturing process for equipment maintenance, there's a common statistic of 20 to 30% of all manual inspections fail to identify all of potential failed components. And so that results in a 70% increase in unplanned downtime. And so if you can augment it with a computer vision based solution, we work with one called Clarify, there's many others, but this ability to take an off-the-shelf application who has already trained a model to identify the type of equipment you're working with, and they're applying their software application to those types of images for quality control or manufacturing maintenance, then they were able to really achieve a much higher uptime than they were able to before. So I think computer vision, much more so than natural language processing, we've partnered a lot with different independent software vendors that have a lot of capability in this area of AI, and have been successful in really seeing, showing organizations what they can do with computer vision.
Yeah, it's a great example, Kurt. And it's one of the questions we get a lot in these webinars is folks asking, what are some use cases where you've seen Gen AI actually go into production and not just be a proof of concept or not just be a cool idea that somebody has? And I think those are really good examples of, there are lots of use cases where if you can demonstrate some kind of marginal improvement over what you were doing in the past, 100% accuracy is not necessary, right? If you're able to reduce unplanned downtime through computer vision applications, right? That's an example where Gen AI doesn't necessarily need to be 100% accurate if you can demonstrate that it is improving your unplanned downtime and it's saving you money, right? That's a great example. And then there are other situations like Morgan you mentioned with respect to the chat bots where maybe it is a problem if you're not accurate, especially if you're feeding it data that is not accurate. I mean, that's if you're not feeding in quality data, you're feeding in data that's not representative of your company policies, and then the chat bot is spitting out that answer, that's certainly a problem. And that's where you need to think about, well, should this be customer facing, right? So I think there are just some good examples there of the different considerations that you might have in bringing Gen AI into production or making it customer facing. It's like, what's the worst that could happen? And also, what are the incremental improvements that we could get by leveraging this technology that we weren't getting before? So I think those are some of the part of the framework of thinking through, what ultimately should get out into production and be released out into the world. So I'm going to get to the next question here, which is, what role do you see Gen AI in enhancing interpretability and transparency of results in computer vision? So we talked about multimodal and the ability to go back and forth between text and images. So that might play a key role in this. What are you guys' thoughts here? Ming, why don't you start with that one?
Yeah, so Gen AI has this technique called feature visualization, which allows users to see which parts of the image the model is focusing on when making the decision. So by highlighting specific regions of an image used for classification or detection, Gen AI can help users to understand the basis of the machine's decision, making the results more transparent.
Yeah, Morgan, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think, multimodal is a great example of some of these. I think text, but also other types of multimodal. I think we're, starting to see, audio interpretation as well, like kick off here. I know Google has that notebook experience where you can upload a bunch of your notes or just anything, and it'll turn that into an audio experience. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of that where, I can get someone explaining to me how a piece of data works and walking through, I can upload a bunch of information about, my data or the data itself. If I have visuals on the data and get kind of an audio walkthrough of what that means. I think we're going to see a lot more of that where we're kind of combining these different types of learnings and different types of interpretation. And I think, multimodal Gen AI is just going to really start taking off in that area a lot as we see more and more of that. Just, everyone learns differently, everyone takes in information differently, and sometimes you need different types before it really sets in. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot of that in this area for sure.
Yeah, great points. Kurt?
I think there's, it's super exciting. I mean, I mentioned Kaggle as one of the sites that they have a competition out there to predict the wildfire growth in the different topology and landscapes. So you can not only detect through satellite imaging where a wildfire is occurring, but then how do you predict where that wildfire is actually going to burn and in what direction and what rate? And there's just a lot of really cool innovation around public health. I worked with one client that was doing algae bloom detection from satellite images, and you would think, oh, algae bloom, that doesn't sound very exciting, but for older people and some dogs, it has a lot of health implications if you get a large bloom of algae in lakes or ocean areas. And so warning the public that these things are happening is, you know, really cool, just to give them an alert for those people that, you know, need to know that type of information. So I see, you know, the other thing that's really cool about, you know, computer vision is there is a big adoption of this no code or low code frameworks that are happening. So you're seeing a lot of things like Google Vision AI and Azure Cognitive Services and others that are providing the ability to take your data, your images or your virtual and videos, and then run it through a low code, no environment. So I think this will only help people adopt AI quicker because their point of entry is so much lower because they can use a lot of these no code or low code platforms to really do computer vision with their own types of data. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, low code, no code, and breaking down some of those barriers to entry from a technical perspective is absolutely going to be huge for computer vision applications across the board. So we've talked about some of the really exciting things that are happening with Gen AI and computer vision, but we'd be remiss not to talk about some of the challenges as well. So for organizations that maybe already have computer vision applications that they have within their organization, and they're trying to build Gen AI into those in some way, either to democratize them, to help with transparency, explainability, to help them do things maybe they couldn't do before. What are some challenges associated with being able to do that within an organization? Ming, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I would like to. So data privacy and security is a top thing comes up to my mind, especially in the healthcare industry. So when you talk about digital twins, how many, you know, phenotype or features of a patient can you get? And when you're duplicated, does it give away the identity of the patient when you're copying from? Things like that. So how do we allow generative AI to leverage the data but without bypassing the security setting? So I have like I said earlier, I was working on incorporating enterprise data into our OpenAI model. And one of the testing case we're working on is to test if the model can return a doctor's demographic data correctly without disclosing the confidential information. So depending on the prompt you ask, if you ask, so hey, can you just provide me the doctor's demographic information, it will give you the things that are not confidential, which is correct. But if you say, give me all the data of a doctor, it will give you all the doctor's data and without bypassing the security configuration. So that's a concern. And we're still tuning that model, but that's first thing we have to clear before we make it production.
Yeah, great point there. Governance is a huge component of this as we're leveraging all kinds of data and connecting it to large language models, for instance, and other Gen AI models. Governance has to be at the center of that conversation for those reasons you mentioned, Ming. Morgan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've touched on a lot of them already. So I'll just kind of do a quick summary of some of the ones I think we've touched on and then maybe add a couple. But, you know, obviously, yeah, data privacy and governance is a huge one. We've talked about kind of the risk of hallucinations or mistakes, or maybe not even necessarily not an incorrect answer, but maybe incorrect given the context of the company. I think these are all things that need to be addressed depending on the exact use case. And especially if we're exposing this to external users, we might, care a lot more about some mistakes than others. And we really need to, it can be really hard, as I think, you're hearing in these conversations, it can be really hard to guess how users are going to use something like a chatbot or Gen AI. It's so free form. I think it's really hard to cover all edge cases and all use cases. So I think that's something to consider of, if there is a way to access that information, users are really creative about how they try and do it. So I think it can be really hard at trying to go case by case and just in guessing everything. There's also obviously the cost can be hard. I think as we continue into this Gen AI space, we're finding, cheaper and cheaper options or smaller and smaller models that can be run more efficiently. But I do think that is kind of the first step I take when deciding whether to implement a lot of these Gen AI solutions is the cost and the other risks really going to outweigh the value here? And I think a lot of times the answer is no still in some of these cases. I do think the industry is moving really quickly, so there's a lot more opportunity, but in some cases, it could be just not the right time or not there yet for certain use cases. I do also want to call out there is ethical implications for some of these use cases of, some of them are trained on data that includes information from other artists and authors that weren't necessarily notified or weren't aware of how their work was going to be used. So I think that's a good thing to call out with companies as well of, depending on if you're using an out-of-the-box model or a pre-trained Gen AI model from, somewhere else, what is the data that's being used there, both for ethical understanding and bias understanding of knowing what is in there and what might come out. So I think those are all things we need to evaluate as we're deciding to take on new Gen AI use cases.
Yeah, great points. Kurt, what challenges are you seeing?
Well, I couldn't agree with Ming and Morgan here. I mean, sovereign AI that Ming mentioned is really a key topic. I mean, a lot of people want to train their models and ensure their data is resonant in their own environment or state or country, right? Cost is certainly a key factor of what's the TCO for some of these projects. But I'd probably be a little remiss if I didn't say the top three, challenges with AI are data, and then data again. Data liquidity is probably one of the most important attributes of a successful project. Like, how do you seamlessly access and combine and analyze all your data from different sources, right? I work with so many customers that they're just struggling on how to get their data and do feature extraction into something. So they struggle a lot with data quality and how do they ensure the quality of the data they have can be applied to the models and their use case. And these are multi-month, yearly long projects just to get ready to do something with AI, is just get their data into a state it's liquid enough where they can use it. It's got the quality and the features they want to apply to an AI model. And so, we all say that an AI model is only as good as the data that it's given, and it couldn't be more true. And that's probably one of the biggest areas that we help clients more with, is just the ability to really understand and interpret their data and get it ready.
Yeah, those are great points. We have a saying around here that the best AI strategy is a good data strategy. So that's echoing everything that you guys said. And we've got one question here in the chat asking Nilu asking specifically about use cases in healthcare and how you're addressing the challenge of data governance. So Ming, why don't you start with that one? But then I'd like to hear from Kurt and Morgan as well about how you guys are seeing the challenge of data governance. What are some specific examples of how you're combating those challenges? So Ming, why don't you kick us off there?
Yes, absolutely. So data governance and data structure is crucial in the accuracy of Gen AI's results. So to start with, when we feed data into the Gen AI model, we have to define clearly the data definition, data structure, data relationship. Now, even that doesn't necessarily guarantee the Gen AI return correct data. So still, we have to continuously test it and with other use cases to see if it's returning the correct results. Also, before we deploy, we have to test with for the users to test it. We have to again apply different scenarios and use cases to just test it out. That's how we do it. I mean, there's no fit model or theory or guide to do that yet. It's still in the test and trial phase, really, for Gen AI data accuracy wise.
Yeah, great point. Test before you get into production.
Yeah.
Kurt, what are your thoughts on that one?
Well, we believe in the world as hybrid. And so first and foremost, if governance is a main concern, then keep your data where it's governed the best, which is usually inside your own data center. Deploy AI within your own capabilities and your own security controls. So we work a lot with customers to say, hey, if you adopt open source models and you can keep your data local and you're seeing the accuracy of open source models approach closed source models, then governance is, greatly, enhanced with keeping your data exactly where it is today, which is in your own company and within your own security controls. I will say that, there is a lot of merging of data in the public domain as well as with private data. And we work with the likes of NVIDIA. They have a solution called Guardrails that allows you to really try to address hallucinations or limit the sort of access to data that might be there. At one of our recent conferences, I'll tell you a quick story. We had an avatar of our CEO, and Jensen, the CEO of NVIDIA, asked it like, who's your favorite vendor to work with? And so we had a guardrail in place to actually give an answer that would be politically correct and not, deviate in terms of recommending something outside our own organization. So, there's a lot of ways you can implement controls around governance by keeping it on-prem or implementing other solutions by various vendors.
Yeah, great points. Morgan, what controls are you seeing around governance?
Yeah, so many. I'm not in the healthcare space, so don't have quite as much, HIPAA compliant data needs, but definitely it's still, I think what is surprising sometimes is just how much data you really do have on people. And I think I brought up earlier, not knowing what users are going to ask or what all those edge cases are going to be. I think sometimes people don't even realize what information exists in the data they already have, right? Even if you are only collecting things that people have input about themselves, sometimes people are very open in their social media captions or something like that about, personal information. And so I think with more traditional models, it can be maybe simpler to think about sometimes, where you just say, hey, I can go through the features that exist and decide what features to add or remove. I think when we start talking about Gen AI, especially if we're, customizing our own models and giving it access to a bunch of our data, sometimes we're not even aware of, what is in our data that we might be giving it access to. So, fully agree with Kurt of, I think sometimes it can be, as simple as, hey, just making sure I'm keeping that data, I'm looking through it, it lives kind of in a space that I'm aware of and can monitor and be very, very clear about what is coming in and out and who has access to what. But also just, I think I keep honing in on this topic, but I think Gen AI can also just be so helpful in telling us what's in our own data and calling out what's in our data. So testing and making sure that we are kind of asking all of those questions, asking what data it has access to, and really being fully aware of what free response information we are giving it access to. I think in a lot of ways, I'm very, conservative, maybe is the right word on what I give different models access to, and very slowly increasing that as needed. I think for a while, a lot of the technique was just kind of throw all the information we can at it and it'll figure it out. And I think we're finding with some of these newer models, we're talking about how good some of these open source models are getting, that you can really refine that data and really be very strict about what you do and do not give it access to. And I think that can help a lot too, is just being very cautious and maybe cautious is not the right word, but very intentional about what data we are including here.
Yeah, great points. And I think you highlight well, Morgan, the idea that this is really a double-edged sword. I mean, one of the most exciting things about Gen AI is that it gives us the ability to tap into a lot of data that we previously was probably just sitting there lying dormant and nobody was really leveraging it. Unstructured data in particular gives us the potential to really tap into that wealth of data that is being underutilized. But the flip side of that is, if we weren't leveraging it and we haven't historically been leveraging it, we don't always know what it is that we've collected and what the potential applications of it are. So you do have to, you have to test and you have to think about what are the potential implications of sort of opening this up and starting to leverage this data in new and perhaps unforeseen ways. So I want to, with that, kind of look in our crystal balls and ask you guys to make some predictions about the future. And we're not going to go 10 or 20 years into the future, but we'll say 3 to 5 years, over the next several years as Gen AI capabilities get more mature, as we start to see even more advancements in the field of computer vision. What are some emerging trends or potential applications that you think are going to shape organizations' use of computer vision and Gen AI? So Kurt, why don't you start with that?
Well, I mean, there's always been a big promise around autonomous driving. I'm hopeful that we will get to a point where we're all comfortable driving in an autonomous vehicle, but certainly a lot of advancements there. In the short term, we're working with a lot of customers that want to, and Ming mentioned this earlier too, synthetic data generation, right? So I think more and more we're realizing that being able to generate some of your own data synthetically to enhance your accuracy in your model prediction is, a recent trend that's been really, really key to understanding. I think I mentioned 3D visualization. I think we're still in the 2D world, and I think 3D will get us, more in the 3D space. Certainly LiDAR and other 3D, techniques are being used for autonomous, driving. So it'll be interesting to see some of those things come online. And then I just personally think we'll see just more and more better open source models. We'll see better techniques. I'm just amazed in this field. Like, people come up with just some fantastic ways of doing things so much better from a technical perspective. And it isn't a month that doesn't go by where someone publishes a paper and there's something brand new that has a significant impact. I mentioned the GANs and the VITs before, but there's just a lot of innovative technology coming that I think will continue to just make it easier, streamline it, make it more easy to adopt. So it's super exciting to see all the innovation happening in the industry.
Absolutely. Morgan, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, definitely. So many trends that I think see coming. It's a huge area. I think it'll continue growing really fast. And I think that brings me to my first one is I think we are going to start seeing, maybe faster, smaller models. I think we're going to see a lot of these start to get towards real time or close to real time use cases for, a lot more computer vision or Gen AI computer vision. I think, Kurt touched on autonomous vehicles. I think that's a great example of that, where you really need those immediate decisions or updates there. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. I hope we're really going to start seeing a lot more attention to the source data that goes into generative AI models. I think, like I said, I think the technique for a while has been kind of give it everything you can. We saw some of the early GPT models just trained on huge portions of the internet. And I think that, could go a long way, but I think we're going to start seeing some more intentionality around that source data, acknowledgement of hopefully the, authors and artists we're taking that data from, but also more analysis of that data, what bias might exist there, what do we really want to be withholding from the model, and what do we want to be including. Kind of along those lines, I think we are going to start seeing some more specialized or specific Gen AI models that are really trained up for one specific use case or, a small group of use cases and are really, really good in that area rather than kind of trying to be well-rounded in everything. And I think especially as we start seeing a lot of these open source examples popping up, I think those can be, we can be more intentional about the data. We can train them at a lower cost when we're kind of focusing in one subject area. So I think we're going to see a lot of those popping up, or continue to see a lot of those popping up, maybe is a better phrasing for that. I think we touched on this a bit earlier, but I think multimodal is going to be so huge, and pulling in other modalities besides just images and text. I think we're going to start seeing a lot of Gen AI around audio. We're starting to see that now where we have, audio generation, but I think we're going to see a lot of that a lot more, and video being a huge piece of that as well, especially as those two mediums become such big parts of society and internet communication in general. I think that's going to be a huge one. that we see taking off a lot is just kind of different modalities being brought in. I think a lot of times in the past, when we've talked about multimodal machine learning in general, it really has just been purely text and images, because that's really what we've been able to send to different models of, we need a single image and a piece of text that it can analyze. And I think that's really what we've focused on. And I think even that space is growing so quickly and is amazing, but I think there's like so many other modalities out there. And I think that's really going to take off. And then I think the last one to me is something that's already been growing a lot, but also just that partnering together between Gen AI and humans and the rest of us. I think, ChatGPT was maybe really the first one where they were kind of focusing on, or the first big one at least, where they were really focusing on a UI, a user experience of, hey, people can come in and chat with this service in like just a really dynamic, easy to use, intuitive way. You don't have to be at all technical. You can ask it anything. You can really bring it into your day-to-day life if you wanted, or you can use it to kind of inspire your own creativity where you have an idea for an image you want to generate, or you have an idea for a story you want to tell, and you're kind of using this as a back and forth experience. I think we're going to see a lot more of that, where people focusing on the technology they're building and, the models and trying to get those techniques better and better, but also focusing on the user experience of those models and, maybe the novelty in for a specific company or a specific model won't be the model itself, but how it can be used and how people can interact with it in ways that are intuitive and feel like, I don't know if partnership is the right word, but feel like, hey, this is, augmenting my own experience and allowing me to express my own creativity and just kind of lean on this Gen AI to help me with that. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that, a lot more focus in that area of that user experience portion of Gen AI.
Yeah, great predictions. Ming, what are your thoughts?
All great points. I couldn't agree with you more. I just want to add one more thought is domain-specific models. So we see all these open source models, big models, they're general models. Now, in domain-specific, especially like medical data, medical imaging data, there needs collaborations across different institutions and hospitals so that they can combine their resources together and leverage economy of scale, if you will. So I think in the future, domain-specific models will be the focus, at least in the near future, so that companies can leverage the model to their own specific data more. And everything else they said already. So, and like Kurt mentioned, the data is the limit, is the bottleneck of image analysis, because image data is so big now, especially that. That's the reason why collaborating and consolidating resources together, I think, will make sense.
Yeah, all really great points. And I think one thing that we're going to really see evolve over the next few years are the frameworks of how we think about these things and really being able to get them into production in a safe and responsible way. So we're very much in the infancy right now of generative AI and its capabilities, and we're still really working out, the gap between sort of the possible and then what's actually realistic and what's beneficial. So I think as we continue to work this out within organizations, I think we're going to become much more sophisticated in our frameworks for how we understand, what ultimately is going to move the needle from a business standpoint. What are the projects that actually help the business move forward strategically and help it make money or save money, and then how do we respect individuals' data? How do we have effective governance in place? How do we mitigate biases? All of these things that right now a lot of organizations are struggling with. I think we're going to have much more robust frameworks, and it's going to open up a lot of new use cases that maybe today would not be profitable or responsible, but maybe in the future, in the near future, will be as we start to get some of this stuff figured out. So with that, we're approaching the end of our time. So I want to jump to our lightning round and ask each of you to share in a word or a phrase one critical insight or takeaway about the future of computer vision powered by Gen AI. So why don't we start with Morgan?
Yeah, I think mine fits with the theme of what I keep bringing up, but I think my phrase would be support and inspiration for human creativity and interactivity.
Great. Ming?
I think it will be look through the image, but look past the image. Basically, image is a reflection of what you gave them. Like all models, the result is like what's garbage in, garbage out, we'll see what's out. So look through and look past it.
Great point. Kurt, final word.
Well, I just challenge all of you to partner for success. I think you're not in this alone, and think hard about who could help you. We would love to help you at HPE, but there's others as well out there, and I don't think there's many organizations trying to solve these computer vision problems on their own. And just partner with the right people to make you successful. So give some real good thought about how you do that.
That is an excellent point. Having good partners is a critical part of making success happen in this domain. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I really appreciated the great insights from our panelists. If you missed any of the webinar or want to rewatch anything, the recording will be available a few minutes after this webinar if you just refresh this page. And thank you again to our partner at Hewlett Packard Enterprise for making this webinar possible. Thank you guys again, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Bye now.
Thanks for moderating, Brian.